Nowadays, a huge number of people use Apple technology, such as iPhones, and there is also a lot of people using Microsoft. These are two companies that have completely changed our lives. Now, many people cannot live without Apple or Microsoft. But how were these two great companies created? Who are their founders? In this video, I will tell you about the founders and how these companies were built. This video will be especially useful for beginners who needs more motivation. After all, despite all the difficulties, these guys were able to build such a great corporations. Be sure to watch this video to the end. Let's start with Apple and its creator Steve Jobs. The idea of creating a computer for everyone was fundamental to Steve Jobs' business. Along the way, he turned Pixar into one of the most famous animation studios, founded Next, and of course, built the Apple empire. Jobs is often called the father of the digital revolution, but his difficult character and the desire for perfection often become an obstacle on the way for a future development. Let's learn in details about the life of one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time. Stephen Paul Jobs was born in 1955 in San Francisco. His father was a Syrian and his mother was German. The union of young students was not accepted by their families, so Steve was given up for adoption. The foster parents brought the boy to Santa Clara. Now, it's also known as the Silicon Valley due to the many headquarters of high-tech companies. Young Steven grew up among engineers involved in the development of electronic devices. This formed his personality and stimulated his interest in this field. At the age 13, Jobs dared to call William Hewlett, co-founder and president of Hewlett & Packard, to ask for details for a school project. Impressed by the teenager's courage, Hewlett provided him with the parts he needed. But he also invited him to intern at the company. It was there that Jobs became friends with Steve Wozniak. It is important to remember this man, as Wozniak played a significant role in Jobs' life. After the high school, Jobs entered Reed College in Portland, Oregon, but dropped it after the semester. He became fascinated with Eastern spiritual practices, and to pay for a trip to India, he worked part-time developing video games at Atari. Soon, he was able to travel to India, and when he returned to the United States, he met Wozniak again. He was in the process of building compact computer. For Wozniak, it was just a hobby. However, the visionary Jobs saw a huge commercial potential in this device and convinced his friends to start a common business. In the 70s, they set up a store in his parents' garage, naming the company Apple. To raise the initial capital of $1,350, Jobs sold his Volkswagen van and Wozniak sold his Hewlett-Packard calculator. Although the first Apple I prototype sold mostly to enthusiasts, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak earned enough to improve the design. A few years later, they introduced the Apple II, the first personal computer with the color graphics and a keyboard. By the 80s, competition had increased, and sales of the new third version of the computer were falling. That all changed after Jobs visited the Xerox PARC lab. There, he saw how scientists were working on the graphical interface, computer mouse, laser printing, and object-oriented programming. Jobs became obsessed with the idea of the graphical interface. A short time later, he introduced the Macintosh. It was the first personal computer with the graphical interface and mouse control. This product revolutionized the market. However, even here it was a disappointment. The cost of device of more than $2,000 was too high for the average customers. Sales were falling, and Steve refused to admit mistakes. Tense relations with CEO John Scully led to the fact that Jobs left the company. It was a hard hit for him. Apple was his life. But after 4 months of traveling and searching for new ideas, he found it courage to come back with new plans. Steve founded Next, a company that was developing a computer platform for universities. I believe that persistence is half of what separates successful entrepreneurs from unsuccessful ones, Jobs once said. In the same year, the enterprising businessman acquired a computer animation company from George Lucas. Together with a team of specialists, he transformed it and named it Pixar. The first 5 years, Jobs sold equipment, but the cartoon created by the studio unexpectedly won an Oscar. It was a short film called The Teen Toy. Soon, there were a product called RenderMan for 3D animation, thanks to which Pixar created promotional videos. They attracted the attention of the well-known Disney studio. The result of their cooperation was the famous Toy Story. After the release of the cartoon, Steve's capital grew up to $1.5 billion. In relations with people, Steve was as demanding as to work. He expected maximum dedication from his employees, and at the same time could humiliate or insult some of them. Despite this, the innovator was deeply respected, though feared. His approach to interacting with people was reflected in his words, "I don't try to be pleasant to others. My job is to make them become better." By the way, do you know how Steve hired employees? One of the most famous methods of selection was the riddle that Jobs used in the hiring process. This test was firstly used during his return to Apple. Candidates were shown a sequence of letters of the alphabet, like A, B, C, D, where the next letter were replaced by the bottom line. They were required to guess what should follow next. Interestingly, the correct answer was not the letters E, but F. This seemingly simple test allowed Jobs to build a team that took the company to the next level. Back in the 90s at Apple, Jobs showcased the best of his products. It all started with the iMac and iBook, followed by own operating system. Jobs became a CEO of Apple, opened a chain of retail stores, and introduced products such as the iPod and iPhone. There also appeared iTunes media player and iMovie video editor. In 2010, the iPad tablet was released, but by that time, Steve Jobs was already seriously ill. A year later, he submitted his resignation as he could no longer perform his duties. Steve Jobs not only raised Apple to the top of the technology industry, but also made it a ladder for all American business. Many claim that he was not an inventor, but he was able to successfully use and improve other people's ideas. He had the unique intuition that allowed him to identify which products should be successful. Now, let's talk about Microsoft and its founder Bill Gates. Bill was born on October 28 in 1955 in Seattle, basically the same year as Steve Jobs. He was born into a wealthy family belonging to the upper middle class. In childhood, he was characterized by shyness and isolated, showing no interest in the game of peers. This bothered his parents, forcing them to ask for help from a specialist. An experienced psychologist who examined Bill saw a strong character behind his external vulnerability and told his mother that her son cannot be changed. The only way out for her is to adapt to his features. At the age of 10, Bill Gates, the son of respectable parents and successor of their names, earned his own money for ice cream, playing cards. He rarely lost. Curious and intelligent, Bill quickly lost interest in the usual lessons of elementary school. When he was 13 years old, his parents realized that his abilities require special education and transferred him to a private school. Gates' first business venture was back in 70s with Paul Allen. Their company was called Trafo Data and had only 2 employees, Paul and Bill. As part of their venture, they developed a traffic management program for the municipality of Seattle. This activity earned them $20,000. However, by Allen's own confession, Although the company brought some profit, it did not become successful. Therefore, the partners had to close their business. For most people, this could be a serious blow. But for Gates and Allen, this experience was only a valuable lesson for the future. After graduating from high school, Bill scored impressive grades on that SAT exam. Following a family tradition, he entered to Harvard University, planning to study law. In Harvard, he met Steve Ballmer, who later became the director of Microsoft. Despite his chosen profession, Gates remained withdrawn and unsociable. This clearly did not help his success in law. He rarely attended student parties, except for those organized by Ballmer. At the same time, Paul Allen persistently convinced him to start a new software firm, but Bill did not dare to drop out. That all changed when Allen, on his way to a friend's house, purchased the January edition of Popular Electronic magazine. The cover showed first mass-produced personal computer for consumers. Realizing that this was the exact time, the friends decided to take a chance. The home computer market was just beginning to take off, and they realized that software would be an essential part of it. Gates immediately called MITS, the company that had created the Atari computer. He said that he and Paul were working on creating a basic interpreter for his computer, despite the fact that they didn't have anything at that time. The company expressed interest, and the president of MITS, Ed Roberts, set up a meeting. At that meeting, they were demonstrated their program. Gates and Allen had to work at an incredibly fast speed, creating program code and testing it on other computers. On the day of the presentation, their program was accepted by the Atari computer, and MITS immediately purchased the rights to it. Gates considers this day the birth of the software market. This is how Microsoft was born, where Bill and Paul invited their high school friends to work. Despite the fact that the first 5 Microsoft clients went bankrupt, the guys didn't give up, and in 1979 they returned to Seattle. In the same year, Bill was removed from the university for skipping classes and falling grades. In 1985, Microsoft released the Windows 1 operating system. Despite lots of drawbacks and errors, it was an important step for the company's road to success. A year later, Microsoft stocks went public for the first time, and Bill Gates became a billionaire instantly. A year later, Microsoft introduced the first version of Windows, and in 1993, monthly sales of the operating system exceeded to 1 million copies. Until the year 2000, Gates held the position of CEO of Microsoft, and in January passed his responsibilities to Steve Ballmer. In June of 2008, Gates finally left the leadership of the company. As you can see, no matter what, Steve and Bill have had a great success. Believe in yourself and you will succeed. We have more interesting videos about cryptocurrency, finance, and earnings on our channel, so go ahead and watch them. I really hope that from this video you get to know Steve and Bill way better. Give us a like and subscribe. This is the Talking Team. See you soon.